Israel's warning to Hezbollah of the prospect of an all-out war. Tensions between the Netanyahu government and the United States seem to be rising over the supply of weapons. The White House has canceled a high-level U.S.-Israel meeting on Iran that was scheduled for Thursday after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video claiming the U.S. was withholding military aid. The Israeli Prime Minister implied that holding back of weapons was slowing Israel's offensive in Rafah. He also referred to his talks with the U.S. Secretary of State last week in Israel, saying that Antony Blinken assured him that the administration was working day and night to remove those bottlenecks.
I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies.
After Netanyahu's statement, however, the White House denied his claim that the U.S. has been withholding weapons to Israel for months, stressing that the U.S. has only paused one shipment of bombs. Speaking to reporters, Antony Blinken made clear that the hold was only on the heavy bombs, and arms transfers to Israel through its system continues on a regular basis. Antony Blinken said that the U.S. continues to review one shipment of 2,000-pound bombs because of Biden's concerns about their use in densely populated areas like Rafah.
We have one case that the president's talked about publicly about the 2,000-pound bombs and concerns that we have about them being used in densely populated areas. That remains. We continue to work through that, but there's been no change in our posture.
Israel has relied on these powerful bombs because the U.S.-made 2,000-pound aerial weapons are the largest bombs in Pentagon's Mark 80 series of bombs. The bomb can carry a higher payload because it doesn't have an engine of its own. About 40% of the weight of each of its weight is composed of a highly explosive mixture. The rest of the weight comes from its steel case. When detonated, the bomb shell shatters into razor-sharp fragments that can shred human bodies, unarmed vehicles alike. Nothing within a 350-meter radius can survive the blast. These 4.5-meter-long bombs leave immense craters in their wake. The 2,000-pound bomb are dumb or unguided bombs, but these can be turned into more precise weapons with the addition of joint direct attack munition kits, which adds a tin tail fin and navigation to it. The added kit enables troops to guide the munitions to a target rather than simply dropping it from a fighter jet on the ground. According to the U.S., the ideal targets for weapons of that size are buildings, rail yards, and lines of communication. According to a New York Times report, during the first 6 weeks of the war in Gaza, Israel routinely used these destructive bombs in areas it designated safe for civilians. All right, we are now joined by Dov Zakheim, former Undersecretary of Defense in the George W. Bush administration and currently senior advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. Well, it seems that the White House has canceled a high-level U.S.-Israel meeting on Iran, which was scheduled for Thursday after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video on Tuesday claiming that the U.S. was withholding military aid. What are your thoughts?
Well, the 2,000-pound bombs are dumb bombs, as they're called, very much as you described them. I think the Israelis would like to see them mated or attached or converted, whatever term you want to use, to the Joint Direct Attack missile package, which would make them guided. So the Israelis are a little frustrated about all of this. I just got back from Israel, and there is a belief, a widespread belief in Israel, not entirely accurate at all in my view, but I'm not talking about my view, I'm talking about theirs. Many, many people believe that the United States is withholding arms to Israel, which clearly is not the case, as Secretary of State Blinken made clear. What is happening, though, is that, for instance, the Israelis want more fighter aircraft. Those are moving through the regular system. And I think what the Israelis would like is an emergency shipment of these aircraft to get them over more quickly. So you have Mr. Netanyahu essentially reinforcing his public's impression that Biden is holding back on Israel, whereas in Washington, the sense is that, on the contrary, despite pressure from his left wing, Biden is actually continuing to support Israel. And so there's tremendous frustration here. And it's one thing if the Israelis quietly complain to the White House or the Pentagon or the State Department. It's another thing when the Israeli Prime Minister goes public and essentially gets people to reinforces, I should say, people's beliefs that Biden is holding back deliberately. No wonder the White House is annoyed.
That's very interesting. Perhaps because President Biden tried to make this impression during numerous interviews, saying that, you know, the United States would withhold weapons should this happen, should that happen in Rafah. The perception perhaps was created from there. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and also how bridgeable or non-bridgeable is the divide between the White House and Prime Minister Netanyahu at this point?
Well, clearly Biden has said some things, but the president, as we all know, says lots of things off the cuff. The fact of the matter is that we, the United States, are continuing to ship weapons to Israel. That is an undisputable fact. And so in that respect, Blinken is correct. The issue isn't so much that we are holding back and not sending. The issue is, are we sending weapons and equipment quickly enough to satisfy Netanyahu and the public that supports him? That's an issue of debate. But nevertheless, I think the idea that Biden is holding back in some deliberate way just is not accurate at all. Can this be bridged? I think so, for the very simple reason that Joe Biden has called himself a Zionist. He has not backed away from that statement. Now, as you well know, there's a huge debate in this country over what Zionist means, but it certainly doesn't mean a Jew in Joe Biden's case. So he has been supportive. Maybe he hasn't been 110% supportive, as some would like, but he's certainly supportive. And so I think because of that, the bridge can be managed again. The White House, by the way, has said that they haven't canceled this discussion on Iran. They've postponed it, which leaves them the opening to have a meeting at any time that both sides agree on.
All right. Well, we'll be following it very closely. Dov, Zach Hyman, I hope to speak to you again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.